I'm Julie Bartke with this Senate update. Senate Minority Leader David Hann is asking Governor Mark Dayton to reconsider the salary increases he has promised his commissioners. He made that request in a news conference on Tuesday.
Thank you all for being here this morning. We just wanted to very briefly revisit the issue of commissioner pay raises that was a topic of discussion earlier during the legislative session. And just to remind people a little bit about what the background was, back in the last budget, when the Democrats were in the majority in both the House and the Senate, they passed a bill that enabled the governor to, on his own, raise the pay of the commissioners if he so desired. In 2014, there was a 5% pay increase across the board. And then in 2015, in the beginning of this year, he made substantial increases, 30% and in that range for his commissioners. And that raised a little bit of concern. To the extent that when the deficiency bill came to the Senate floor, which was a bill that we needed to act on early, we had an amendment that would rescind the authority of the governor to make unilateral adjustments to commissioner pay, as well as rescind the pay increases that he had already granted. That amendment failed on essentially a party line vote. But Senator Bach had another amendment that he offered that was restored or was added to the bill that delayed the implementation of the pay increases and allowed a window on July 1st, during which in that window the governor did have the authority to do any pay changes that he wanted to do. So we are here today to encourage the governor to be reasonable. There was just recently announced that the contracts that were settled with state employees granted about a 2.5% raise. That's in line with kind of the cost of living. We see that standard in the private sector. 2.5% is about where people are. 30% is exorbitant. It is a waste of taxpayer money. It is not needed, and it should not be done. And we are here to encourage the governor to be reasonable, to give his commissioners a pay increase if they deserve it, but let's make the increase something that is in the range of what Minnesotans would expect, and it is not 30%. One of the things that Senator Bach talked about on the floor when he had his amendment, the reason to delay this was to give an opportunity for the Hay report to be produced and examined, which is a study of public sector salaries and how they compare. And that study has been done. And what it shows is that Minnesota commissioner pay raises, as they are before the prospective 30% increases, are actually above the standard for similar states, about 11% higher than the median for similar states. So there is not an argument to say that our commissioners are underpaid. This is service. This is not a full-time career. You're not a full-time commissioner for the rest of your life. You're there for 4 years or 8 years or whatever the time might be, but it is service. And I think that the fact that you can find people in the private sector who make a lot more than commissioners, that's certainly true. It's not true what the governor said, that every one of his commissioners could go off and make $1 million. I don't think that is true. He did make that statement. But they are highly paid. They should be paid. They are fairly compensated. They have a good benefit package, and it compares favorably to other states. So we're just calling on the governor today to not go ahead with what he has said he is planning to do, which is to provide these pay increases. And we hope that he will listen to the people of the state of Minnesota and be reasonable and keep his pay increases in line with the rest of the state. Be happy to answer any questions, but that is essentially what we're here to do today before the deadline or before the opportunity the governor has to make these pay increases. Happy to answer any questions.
Didn't you as lawmakers give him permission to raise pay on?
Well, yes, the history is that the Democrat, when they were in the majority, the Democrat legislature at the time granted the governor the ability to do that.
I'm talking about this year.
This year?
Yes.
That,
in the compromise deal that gave him 1 day to raise pay. Did you vote for that?
I did vote for that, because I also voted for the amendment that would take away his power to do that. But I voted for that because it was better than letting him do those pay raises right away. And what I had hoped was that the governor would take that interim time to look at the Hayes study and to reevaluate his decision. And it did create the window for him to do the right thing. And all we're asking for him to do today is to do the right thing and not do 30%, but do something more reasonable.
What's reasonable?
2.5%, 3%, something. I mean, whatever. I think you ought to look at maybe there are merit concerns that ought to be considered. But a 30% increase is substantial. It is unusual. These things don't happen every day in the private sector. And to do it across the board for every one of your commissioners, it speaks to something else going on, and I just don't think it's in line with what people in Minnesota expect.
He did say he is going to keep them under what the maximum is that he could. Should you wait and see what he actually does?
Well, we're calling on him to prospectively to do the right thing, and I hope he does offer raises that are in that 2.5% range. This is what the contracts that were settled with the state employee unions amounted to. And these are the same people that go on and on about the exorbitant pay of CEOs. Why in the world would the governor then give his commissioners such exorbitant pay raises? It doesn't make sense. I don't think people of the state of Minnesota understand that.
Did you ever think you'd be standing up here saying 2.5% was modest?
Well, I don't know if I've ever thought I would ever say that, but I think it is modest. I came from the private sector, and there were no automatic increases when I was working. But you know, if a 2.5 pay increase was fairly modest, and so those are things that you know you look at. What is the rate of inflation or cost of living? Something in that range. Those are fairly modest increases. I wish we could say the same about the state budget as a whole. 2.5% would be fairly modest increase in the state budget instead of 12% or whatever we turned out to have.
Do you anticipate this will be much of an election year issue?
Well, I think it could be. I think depending on what the governor does, to your point, if he restrains his desire and does something more reasonable, maybe it isn't. But if he proceeds with the 30% increase that he originally proposed, then yes, I think it is an issue. I think it's an issue that people should ask, why should we vote for Democrats who have this propensity to give away the farm and to spend money exorbitantly and are out of touch with where the people of Minnesota are? So I think it could be.
Did this come from you?
It came from our caucus, yes.
So what's the implication here, the close personal friends part of this?
Well, I think if his commissioners were trying to suggest are his friends and his and I use that term in a broad sense, they may not be social friends, but they are people that he has chosen, he has picked, he has nominated them, he's put them in office, and he has the power to give them a pay increase without any oversight at all, and this is what he's doing.
So are you saying that he's trying to line the pockets of his friends? Is that
You can draw that conclusion if you wish. I'm just pointing out the fact. Anything else? Do you have anything you wanted to add, Senator Osmond?
I'll just say something.
Sure.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that these commissioners are paid political appointees. They are paid political appointees. They are not CEOs. They are not professionals. The professionals are the ones who report to these individuals. These commissioners are the ones who carry out the orders of the governor. And to equate commissioners with CEOs and how much they can make and how much they can make in the private sector is like comparing an apple to a bowling ball. It's not even in the same realm. And I think the governor needs to take that into account when he's making these changes. I have private sector experience. I work in the private sector. 2.5% is a very good year in the private sector, a very good year. And to give more than upwards of 30% isn't just unrealistic, it is a waste of taxpayers' dollars.
So we're calling on the governor, do the right thing, restrain your desire to give these exorbitant raises, and let's do the right thing.
What's the likelihood he's going to listen to what you have to
I
say?
don't know. Well, I hope he will. I hope he'll show some restraint and do the right thing, but I don't know. You should ask him.
On another topic,
Yeah.
the judge's ruling related to the sex offender issue.
Right.
Do you want to see the legislature move to fix it before the judge orders you to do something?
Well, I think we've got a process. The judge has called for, I think, August 10th, a meeting. I wasn't specifically invited to attend that there. I think there may be some members of our caucus who will be there. I think Senator Bach was asked, and I think the Speaker was asked. And I think what the judge has indicated is he's looking for input about what should be a solution. The governor has said that he's going to contest the ruling of the court. I don't know what the process, how long that takes. I suspect that there will probably not be anything done substantially in the operation of the sex offender program until that challenge is resolved. But we certainly, at least in the Senate, there have been over the past several years a number of bills, 3 or 4, that have suggested various changes both in the current program and prospectively looking forward. Those things, of course, have not passed. So I think there are ideas out there. These things have been talked about. When we were in the majority a few years ago, Senator Limmer and I and others did some examination of the program and trying to craft some way to improve this and the cost of which is high. We have the highest per capita cost of any state in the country for sex offender treatment or sex offender violators. So I think given what the court has done and the response the governor has made, it's probably going to be a little while before we see any substantial changes. But I think the purpose of his meeting, calling the meeting, is to see if there are ideas that he could take advantage of if he is going to go that route. I don't know if he will.
How far are you willing to go to revise the program?
Well, I'm not in charge of the legislature, and I'm not in charge of I'm not the governor. So I think that there are things that, as I've said, we had some bills that suggested some changes. I think that some of those things are sensible. I was the author of a bill when we were in the majority, and I was co-author on a bill that Kathy Sharon had. So I think that there are ideas. We have not apparently gotten to the point where we're ready to act on that legislatively. But I think the court is looking for ideas, and we'll see what happens, and we'll see what happens with the challenge that the governor has brought to the ruling.
As long as we're talking about court decisions, what was your thought of when the Supreme Court ruled on gay marriage?
Well, I have not read the detailed opinion yet. I just got a copy of it. I'm going to try to read that today. But from what my sense of this is, that I think it raises some issues, concerns about religious freedom. I think that the decision was, again, not having read it, but from having read about it, I think that by all reports, it was not a constitutional argument that was made, but it was made on another basis. And that's unfortunate. I think many of us are concerned about the court serving as a legislative or law-making body rather than a judicial body. I think that to find in the Constitution that there is provision to overturn laws that were duly passed in a number of states across the country is a little remarkable. So I think I haven't, as I said, I need to read the opinion, but I'm at this point skeptical of its constitutional basis.
Are there any recourses?
I don't know. I don't know. I think ultimately the people have to decide. What I hope is we don't have a court that is trying to remove the ability for the people to decide.
So in Minnesota, since the people decided this particular issue,
Well, I don't know that the ruling has direct effect on Minnesota, other than if it has the effect of becoming a burden to people who, in the course of exercising their religious rights, freedom rights, find themselves impaired. And I'm not sure what will happen on that front.